Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Dynamic Forces and Dynamite Entertainment present the living legend, Greg Hildebrandt.
Wow. Thank you so much, Nikki. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you at Dynamite.
It's been a lot of fun. We've known each other a good bit.
A while. How long ago was
it? It's almost, we're getting close to, well, it's over 25 years, so I don't know if we're getting close to 30, but yeah. I remember meeting Gene outside of a bar. It wasn't Openers, but it was with Joey and Jimmy, and it was, well, it wasn't Openers.
Gene just said it was 93.
Oh, was it 93? Okay.
He just said, I don't, what the hell? I mean,
Yeah. Now, for everybody to know, when you were taking your painters, schmuck, whatever it's called.
The old Steve Allen show, way before your guys' time in the 50s. He always had this thing going, schmuck, schmuck. I have no idea what the hell it was, but it was some crazy thing. You know what I'm saying? So that's what
I hear you.
Whatever.
So Greg and I were talking about, I wanted him to take his shirt off because right before the interview, Gene said, well, Greg's got to go get his shirt and some coffee. I was like, no, tell him to keep the shirt off. I've seen Greg in a Pirates outfit, I think, when you were at Alexander's Gallery, when you met Frank Frazetta.
Oh my God. Yes. That was the day. I never met Frank, and I've been a fan for a long time. And he's on his entourage off in the corner of the big gallery.
Right.
And I'm thinking, how the hell am I going to go say hi to this man? And make my way across the group, the room, and there he is, holding sway with his tux and everything, and everybody's seeing everything. And I walk up to him. He apparently recognized me. I think Ellie knew who I was too. And I walk up to Frank. I grab his hand, his right hand, and I go genuflect onto my knee and kiss his hand as though he's the Pope. You know what I'm saying? It's like, come on. It was like maybe not. Well, maybe a Pope, right?
Pope, well, if he's the Pope, then you were the Cardinal next in line.
Well, I started to talk, but Ellie came over, I got introduced, and blah, blah, blah. And I see, blah, blah, blah. Oh, he's one of the gods. Ellie says, there's only one God. I said, oh, is this a theological conversation? Yeah.
And Ellie said, no, Frank's God.
Anyway, it was cool. It was fantastic.
I remember that because I went with Pam to the party, and all I knew was that Frank Frazetta was going to be there, you were going to be there, a few other luminaries were going to be there. So Pam and I got dressed up. I wore a suit, she wore a dress, and the security guard downstairs would not let us in because we weren't in costume. And we couldn't get Alexander. So lo and behold, Steve Jeppy comes downstairs to smoke a cigarette, is wondering why we can't get upstairs. And we explained it to him, and he says to the security guard, what are you talking about? He's dressed up as Don Corleone. This is his wife from Italy. Let them up before she gets blown up in a car explosion.
That's great.
That was great. And it was really, 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 I mean, it was a beautiful gallery. It was great to see. It was a lot of fun. But now the second thing that I like to do, first I like to do the introduction. Second thing, my question is always this: why comics? Why fantasy? When you first started, there was so much money in anything else. And you're one of the most talented people, not that even the comics, no, seriously. You're one of the most talented people, not only that the comics industry has ever had, but any entertainment industry, sci-fi, everything. There's a reason why you and your brother are so revered and why people love you. So the question is, late 60s, early 70s, you could have done anything. You started painting sci-fi. I mean, again, you could have been working for an ad agency. You could have done anything, and it would have made more money.
I never pursued money, Nikki. I never, and and in a sense, that's I mean, look at as any artist, you'll take as much money as you can get. You need it for practical reasons. You got to buy food, you got to live, you got to pay your rent, just like everybody else does. But I mean, that's never been the motivation for me or Tim. I mean, it just was never there. And why comics? It's because, hell, you got to remember, I was born in 1939, So I grew up with the comics. That was what we had. We had comics, radio, and basically the comic strips, which were monumentally magnificent back in the day with, Prince Valiant, Hal Foster, and Alex Raymond, Flash Gordon, and all. But that's what we had. That in the Saturday matinees. You'd go to the movies and spend a whole day at the theater watching 2 features of 7 cartoons, short subjects, stuff. And that's comics were the main thing. All the guys that on my block in the east side of Detroit where I grew up collected comics. And if you got you'd get an extra, you'd trade them with each other, swap them back and forth. Some of the guys really were fanatic. They kept them very neatly in stacks with labels on them. So it was a whole thing. That was the main art form for me. I mean, and that was, if I go back in my memory banks to the first stuff that I'm aware of, it's the daily and Sunday newspaper coming in the house. That's the art that I'm aware of on a daily basis. And what is that? That's all comics. It's all sequential art. And like I say, the magnificence of it, though, was like a whole different world back then. It was a truly high art form. And so I never made a distinction between high art or low art. This is some BS routine created by, I don't know who the hell, critics, those who have to compartmentalize and put one thing above something else and say that's better than this and thumbs up and thumbs down. Well, that's BS to me. I mean, I never, before I knew anything about sociological ideals or politics, Tim and I were interested in all kinds of stuff, predominantly comics. So that's why finally, after a long career of film and industrial film and animation and live action documentaries and general illustration, you name it, all around the city, New York, and advertising and publishing, I finally said, then I met Jean and we got together. She started a publishing company, and amongst the many things along the line, I just said to Jean, I would like to do something in comics. It just hit me as something that I was ready and willing and able. It had been there in my mind. And by this time, I'm what? I don't know. That's 1994. I was born in 1939. So I'd already had a lot of careers, in a sense, in art. And I remember the very first thing I did, Gene contacted, who was it, Gene? Was it Carlin or was it, who the hell was it at DC? Somebody you contacted at DC for Joey Cavalieri at DC. And I did a Spectre cover. Of course, that's, again, Jerry Siegel, going back to my time frame. And what Tom Mandrake and John Ostrander had just done a beautiful series. And I wanted to do a cover for that. So they gave me that. That's the very first thing I did, was a painted cover for that thing. Then they seemed to be kind of like not too enthusiastic or whatever it was about me doing more work. So I said, well, we said together, Gene, let's marvel. I mean, because I'd met Stan some years before when he was doing Epic Magazine. And he did an article in Epic on Tim and me. And our project, Ursharak, which is a book we wrote and illustrated, we're trying to get off the ground as a film in Hollywood. And I met Stan way back then, but I never really kept in touch with him, see him on and off. And then, so Gene, I started to make some phone calls over to Marvel, just to kind of like touch base with various people outside of Gene. And my attitude about it was that I was willing to start at the bottom, sweeping floors if necessary, because I had to prove myself. I'd never done anything in sequential art that anybody was aware of, except as a kid I did it, but that's all kid stuff way back when. So I was ready to do right down to the base bottom and start that way. And Gene basically said, well, the hell with that. Called Stan. Stan gave her the people over there to contact, who was Calamari. Joe Calamari was the head at the time, which was a really great name. When we went into his office, Joe had a can of squid on his desk, you know?
I remember Joe. He was a great guy and definitely a character. I'm talking too long. No. I'm just going with the Joe was definitely someone who wanted to break the mold. He worked with new talent like yourself. I remember when it came to Earth X, there was a funny part where, we'll just say that we helped put together Earth X, and I remember we helped promote Marvel Knights, and Joe was the guy at the forefront saying, let's push, let's push, let's push. And he had great people with him like Dan Buckley and others.
Yeah.
So he had people that had the foresight to say, how are we going to get out of this? Because, of course, this was in the middle of the Marvel bankruptcy. People were fighting for ownership of Marvel. But we're going to go a little bit further back right now.
Okay.
So the DNA that you have in pop culture, in comics, and you know me well enough that I'm all over the place. Actually, real quick, you're talking about being a child of the 40s, and the comics were in the newspaper strips. The comics were everywhere. You were trading them. And if you think about it, over the entire 80-year history of the comics, we're an industry. People will argue whether or not we're one of the only American-born industries with jazz and maybe baseball.
Yep.
I'll always say we are. So whether or not people agree, disagree, I don't care.
Yeah.
But the comics, like you said, they were the weekly serials. You had Batman, Shazam, Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers. I think Buster Crabbe played both Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon.
He did in the serial, yes.
And, through the years, the industry has grown and morphed with the direct market. And today the Marvel movies and the DC TV series and some of the new DC movies are back at the forefront, but even other comic books like Dogman or Diary of a Wimpy Kid for a new generation is there.
Yeah.
The only part of this medium that seems to be slowing down, which is a shame, is the newspaper strips. But that's also because newspapers aren't doing what they used to. But let's talk about you. So you one day, and I'm going to see what I remember. You and Tim were hired to create a poster, and it was for this newfangled movie coming out, and it was for something that was going to be really weird, sci-fi things nobody had ever seen.
Sci-fi was always demeaned. Sci-fi was always demeaned in Hollywood. I have no idea why the hell it was.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Until it started making real money, it was.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, no one had seen anything from Star Wars since the 1930 serials. I mean, that 1930s, 1940s.
Right.
That's the last time you saw something like that. And to a degree, that may be why Hollywood looked down on it. Like, it had its time. You know what I mean? It had its day and age.
Yeah, and I think they looked at it as kitsch or kid stuff or that kind of crap. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Star Trek, had 4 seasons. Ooh, wasn't that special? Yada, yada, yada. So you do that. You get called in and you paint this poster, overnight? You're like, I remember.
Well, they needed it fast. I mean, because George Lucas, apparently, I didn't know who George Lucas was. They never mentioned the name to us. The ad agency handling 20th Century Fox's account called us, kind of in a panic. Hey, you guys, we got a film. It's coming out in a week. The director isn't entirely satisfied with the poster he has. You guys got to help us out, please. We had come through overnight once before for them overnight, even though it wasn't used for Young Frankenstein, for Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein. And we literally painted a picture overnight. And the point is, then we got famous for The Lord of the Rings in the 70s. And then they called us because they needed this poster real fast. So we went into the city I live in Jersey, Tim lives in Jersey, got on a train and went into the city and went in and we're looking at all this stuff. And I says, what the hell is this? Who's the guy in the helmet and everything? And it's a man in the iron mask or something. These guys didn't see the film, so they had no idea what it was about, in terms of the story. But they all already had a poster, Tom Young's poster. Tom Young was a great poster artist for a long time. He did the classic Ben-Hur with the big chiseled letters and everything.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So he was great. They had a poster. And it was a nice poster. I mean, they said, I said, what do you want us to do? And they said, well, they want you to make it more comic booky, which I thought, Tim and I, comic booky, what the hell does that mean? That doesn't, they gave us all the information. We got on a train, went back home, and we're discussing it on the train coming back and saying, what does comic booky mean? That doesn't mean ink outline with flat colors, because at that time, that's what comics were, right? There was no really sophisticated coloring yet. And I said, they can't mean that. So we kind of said, well, probably more intense color contrast, and maybe the chick should be a little sexier, more Frazetta-ish. That's what I thought, with no directives.
Right.
And they also said they didn't give us any photos that were really good of the two principals, the actors, Hamill or Fisher. And so we had all these different lighting setups. You need the head, and we had the overhead light coming down on the head. You know what I mean? And we had no shots of their faces in that lighting condition. So how to construct everything was very tough. And they said, "Oh, don't worry about it. Nobody knows who these people are, so you don't have to worry about likenesses." So we went home. They needed the poster. They needed it right away. If we could have brought it in the next day, but it took about 36 hours to paint it. We just worked around the clock. And, it's one of those slapdash things where you're just going to town. I shot my first wife and then a buddy who I grabbed, put bathrobes on them and stuff, and shot Polaroid shots to go from the figure just to get the lighting and everything. Kept Tom Young's basic structure, moving things around a little bit, and brought the painting in, and they liked it, and they said, I said, well, you need something in the corner because the two droids weren't there yet. It seems like you need something. One of the guys left the office and came back and said, yeah, put in the two droids. So right now they needed it right then. So I told them what paint we needed, and we drew the pictures right on the spot, and then transferred them painted on Masonite actually, and they went and got paint that I told them I needed, and then we painted it right there on the scene. And then the next day, we left the painting with them, and that was it. So I left them. I mean, it was like the world went nuts then, and everybody, we got swept up into the craze. Tim and I, like Us Magazine and People Magazine, were knocking at our door. I mean, you're just, and I kept saying, look, this is Tom. Go to Tom. He did the poster. We didn't have anything to do with this movie. We're post-production. It didn't matter. The wave was so huge. I think anybody who was like standing off on the fringes would have got swept up into it.
Well, if I remember correctly, Tom's poster almost was more like Leia and Luke were more like, we're ready to take on the world. Yeah. And your poster had more humanity to it. And it's no disrespect to his. He did a great poster, but yours was more like, I'm ready for battle. And she's more like, I'm ready for battle, because they're up against the Empire.
Yeah. I mean, I had that feeling for it. I mean, Tim and I had already done our own, we were working on our own, conflict of good versus evil, the whole thing. So, and I'd lived in that world since the Lord of the Rings, and all that stuff. And again, going back to comics, it's always the good guys versus the bad guys. That was always those archetypes, those archetypes are going a bit back to the beginning, of human history. But we plunged into it. I think it's upping the palette. You know what I mean? That's the first time, other than our Ursharak paintings, which you've already done. We cranked up the chroma scale of our color and light from what we had done with the Lord of the Rings, which were muted and old world looking. Yeah. So that I think that has an impact. I mean, you find you got what? How much of a fraction of a second to grab somebody's attention with a paperback cover on a book?
It's so little. It's so little. You either grab it or you don't.
Color contrast works for that kind of thing.
Yeah. Even trying to get them to look at it for 10 seconds, you got to grab them for them to say, let me take a closer look. Because if you don't grab them right away, you're not taking that closer look.
And just another little story. Did you ever know Ed Summers? Super Snipe Comic Gallery downtown was incredible. He had a collection that would knock your socks off. That went back to Little Nemo and Slumberland. Winsor McKay.
Wow.
Original sheets. And Ed was as freaking. Fellini would go there to look at his stuff to get ideas. Wow. He was a friend of Lucas, and we got connected to Joe. He was the guy that spent 14 years cleaning up the rights on Conan, the first Conan film.
Okay. And
Ed was the guy that was basically got that movie made. He got in the early stages of it and was working on it like crazy. And we were there, and he says, hey, the film had just come out. Star Wars had just come out. And he says, you want to meet Carrie? And I said, yeah. It's Tim and I. And he walked up the street. It was some someplace in a village. I can't remember exactly what. And went up to her apartment, and she was a big mob there, and she was packing up, ready to go on tour to Europe.
Right.
And she was really nice. She was fantastic. She was really nice to us. And she said, "You made me look a lot better than I really look." And I said, "I don't think so. I don't think so." I said, "Well, look, they told us that the likeness didn't matter because you were unknown. So I can't help that."
Not anymore.
She was great. She was
Yeah. Well, it's amazing. You guys never sat on your laurels, and that's friggin' fantastic.
You're going to get your butts all scratched up doing that kind of stuff.
That's right. It's right. It starts. How are you going to look this good at 81 if you sit on your laurels, right? So,
I mean, no, but Nikki, it's like you don't sit. I mean, it's like there's this kind of nagging dissatisfaction that it isn't good enough yet, and I ain't there yet. It's not right yet. Whatever it happens to be, it can be better. I gotta get there. The next one will be it. That's always that's driven me probably since I was 5 years old, that mentality. And, it's both a curse and a gift because, you're never content.
Right.
There's this kind of eating away at you thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's.
Well, I want to go back to now, as we jump around time, talk about the Tolkien work you did for the Lord of the Rings. And it's amazing. I'm pretty sure reading those books, anyone who had not seen your art, who knew what the characters looked like in their minds? But what I will say is on so many levels, and I say this not taking away from anyone, but Peter Jackson, the Tolkien estate, New Line Cinemas, Disney, who owned 5% too, and the entire genre, sci-fi, comic book, and the rest of the world what the Lord of the Rings became, not only due to Tolkien's imagination, but also that you and Tim took what was there and made it all real. And, I'm sure other artists, if there were other artists, would have done a good job. But there are plenty of times that there are creators that put pen to paper, and when it finally becomes a movie or something, the director or the studio says, this isn't good enough, start from scratch. But when you look at the Lord of the Rings movies, when you look at everything that's been made, the DNA is there. It says Greg and Tim Hildebrandt. You've affected something that is something a creator will always want. Every creator, I had this conversation with Dan Jurgens, your body of work is so incredible that, even when you're 110 and you're ready to call it a day, after 110, the work will live on forever regardless. And it's going to be something that will always be there. And you have such rarefied air. That's the one thing people don't realize. The Carnegies, the Mellons, people read about them in books and you read about them in class. And, obviously, especially if you're a business major, but it's meaningless. They did nothing. They didn't really create anything. People like you, just like Bob Kane, just like Jerry Siegel, just like Stan Lee, you actually created something that touches someone's affection and their sensibilities, and that will always be there. And what kind of feeling is that?
Well, thanks for all that, Vicky. I really appreciate that very much. I mean, kind of a feeling is that. I mean, I always I wake up every morning thanking God, thanking the universe that I'm doing what I'm doing, and thanking Jane, because she's made it all possible, really intensely possible, even though I've done it all my life, but she really has done it for the last 40 years. But I'm grateful for what the world that I inhabit and the kind of work that I do. I tell people, I mean, I'm doing the same thing that I was doing when I was 7 or 17 years old. Only I'm getting paid for it now. And it's a great feeling. I'm not going to say it's not. And as far as the rings go, and that, Howard Pyle, grandfather of American illustration, whatever, he had told his students, NC Wyeth, Schoonover, immerse yourself in it, completely put yourself in the scene, in the world, inhabit it, let it take you over. You have to live in it. And that's always been my approach, and that Tim's approach. It was the approach that Disney had, which we were hung up on. Disney Animation, one of the animators, is you create a real world. You're not decorating a page, even though page decorations are magnificent and beautiful. You're not really decorating a page. You're making a window, into the wardrobe in Narnia, into this world. That was the effort. That's the thought process. That's the way we're thinking and being. So, that kind, and we read the books, and we totally got into that world, and so we just try to put ourselves in there, and like you're just saying, you thought so, and many people did then, because we're almost 40 by the time we did those calendars, three calendars, and we start to get fan mail. Never had fan mail before, and people really telling us that the images that we painted really fulfilled their ideas and thoughts about that world. And the interesting thing, here's a little side, there was a fan artist, so-called Tim Kirk, who did a calendar. Valentine was printing J.R.R. Tolkien's art, and then they printed this one calendar, Tim Kirk's calendar. And on the back of the calendar, they said, Valentine's looking for artists that want to interpret the Lord of the Rings. Tim and I were the only two professionals that showed up.
Wow.
All the art that Ian Summers, the art director at the time at Valentine, had in his office were fans, so-called fan art, you know what I mean? High school kids, college kids. That was it. No professionals showed up. And I can remember, too, at that time, the head of the Society of Illustrators I met in some event was sort of like, we were just starting the first calendar, and he was looking at one of the paintings, and he's, what's this? What's that guy's name? Franzetti? And he had this disdainful attitude towards fantasy art. And that existed at that time. I couldn't figure what the hell it was. Fantasy art, epic mythology goes back to the beginning of the human race, for God's sakes,
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out what the hell the issue was, but there was this prejudicial attitude, even amongst illustrators, professional illustrators and artists, that this was like something you don't want to get involved in. It's kids' crap, it's bad taste, it's something. I don't know what the hell it was.
Well, people who are stuck up like that, what it really comes down to, in my opinion, is it's people want to put everybody else down just to prove that what they have is better.
Right.
Like you said, art is art. It doesn't matter. You don't need to snub your nose at it.
But there's no difference between no Kniff and Botticelli to me. I mean, it's all great art. It's all great art.
And, that's one thing. Hopefully we'll get this scrolled at the bottom also, www.spiderwebartgallery.com, because that's Gene's website and we should promote it. One of the things, speaking of people that look down or don't respect something, you and Gene really respect your entire fan base. Every fan is important. You try and be fair with everybody. You're not one of these artists that says, oh, my art can't be sold. I can't release anything for under $1,000 because, oh my God, what kind of people would buy that? I need only the best to buy it. You're like, hey, we got somebody for something with a budget for $30, and we got something for somebody with a budget for $30,000.
Exactly.
It doesn't make a difference. I just want the audience.
Not at all. I mean, you look at it. I mean, I'm still a kid on the east side of Detroit. I'm still that kid in a blue collar world, working mid-class neighborhood. That's still the same to me. I'm no better than anybody, and nobody's better than me. And Jean's got that exact mentality. She always had it, and I always had it. My mother raised me that way. Her parents raised her that way. There's no one better than you. You're better than no one. We're all equal. We're all equal here on this planet. We're all made out of the same stuff. We're all going to end up the same way. Why play up to anything? I refuse it. Against my ethics, my philosophy, everything. There's nobody whose shit doesn't stink.
And that's just the truth. That's just it. And again, you guys are open. I think there's a reason why when you do comic conventions, you make yourself available to all the fans, and
I
they're
love
all they're all there. And I don't even think you think of it like today's $30 fan will be tomorrow's $3,000
it. Not in
fan.
the least. I'm
Yeah.
excited. If something comes up, I'm working. I love Gene set it up so that when we're doing conventions, and hopefully we'll be doing them again, I paint when I'm there, and I just love the enthusiasm of people. And I'll ask them what they think. What do you think of it? And I take their input right on the spot. And just the interplay with people is fantastic. And I love all the cosplay people, because I'm still a costume guy. I've used costumes in what I do, my work for years and years and years. I made them as a kid, just enthusiastically as all the people that go to cons. It's always been there for me. So I love to play with them. You know what I mean? It's a lot of fun. So it's keeping the kid alive. You have to keep that internal kid alive.
Well, exactly. It's not just immaturity that keeps us young,
That's right.
It's not just immaturity.
Right.
It has a lot to do with it, but not 100%.
No, I know.
That's the one thing. We do enjoy what we do. And I'm really happy to see that you've started to do your own weekly web shows. What days do you have those?
I think on Thursday.
Thursday.
What time, Gene? 4 o'clock? We're starting to do our things, our live things. Thursdays at 4 o'clock.
Thursdays at 4
We
o'clock.
started that. We've only done, 2 or 3 of them. And, it's like, you're trying to clunkily trying to get it together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's the approach you want to take? I think it's going to be, we're trying to get formal, get the structure,
Look, it's the new world that we're in, and it's one of the only ways to be in touch with our fans and just reach out there. And it's the people that are doing this and servicing the fans, because that's what we need to do. Our job is to service the fan.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Have to keep the customer satisfied.
Yeah. And it's to reward them for supporting us.
To me, art has always been a two-sided issue. Me and then those who are looking at it. Once it's out of my hands, it's over with. Now the viewer completes the job.
Yeah. That's got to be the hardest thing. The hardest thing as an artist is when you have a deadline. The deadline's a plus and a minus. The deadline says, I finally got to stop, but you're sitting there looking, saying, if I had a little bit more time, I could change that.
Well, yeah, there's always that. That'll never stop. But the worst thing in the world is you look at it, it's in print now. It's dead. It's over with. You can't do a damn thing about it. And you say, oh, my God, holy crap, I can't look at that. Because you see all the stuff that's wrong with it.
Right.
Fortunately, nobody else has got your eyeballs, but deadlines, I've always loved deadlines. To me, it's like something I've lived on. I've been doing it professionally since I was 18 at the industrial film producer in Detroit, Michigan, the biggest in the country, in fact. So, deadlines to me, those are, it's like you work it, there's, your finishing line, you plan out what it is you've got to do to get to that finishing line. And you simply do it. And the bigger sometimes, in the past anyway, maybe the more challenging deadlines were the worst ones, like the Marvel Masterpieces trading card set. We had 160 paintings to do in 6 months painting plan.
Wow.
I had them all laid out already.
That's a painting that's a painting every day and a half.
Yeah. And you're literally like, remember the Charlie Chaplin thing in the bakery? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like that, and there's an excitement about it. You do stuff that way. If you had like a week to do a painting, it would be completely different than a day to do a painting. So you're making decisions, hasty decisions, in terms of sometimes, certainly for I think that genre, at least the approach that we were trying to take back then in the 90s. Right. It aided it. It added to it. That it's the speed, because you're working in the same way that the original comic illustrators are working. Their deadlines,
Yeah. It's so amazing. When you look at the industry, Howard Chaykin did the first few Star Wars comics for Marvel, and they were a job. And he did a panel once, which cracked me up. He said if he ever would have known those books would have become important, he would have done a better job on them.
I say that
But
about
yeah.
the Star Wars poster. I didn't know Howard said it. He said, I said, if I would have known this damn thing would lasted so long, I would have put 2 more hours in on the painting.
And that's the whole thing, because Marvel got the license and they had to put out 3 issues of the comics before the movie came out.
Yeah.
So it was insane.
I never met Howard. We met him at last year, was it, Jink? And where was it? It was in Baltimore. And he came in singing, "Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful." He's doing Rodgers and Hammerstein. And believe it or not, I like musicals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just joined in with him. So there's Howard and me doing "Oh, what a beautiful morning," singing together, like bellowing on the top of our lungs. Like these 2 old parts, you know what I mean?
Howard is definitely one of the most unique people our industry and the world has ever had. There is no one who is as unique as Howard in any way, shape, or form. We should talk about one thing since we're doing the interview now. So after a lot of pushing, begging, pleading, and a lot of other stuff, sorry, the cats are making some noises. After some pushing, begging, and pleading, and maybe a little bit of patience, we finally got you to do Red Sonja. And we did it as a Kickstarter.
Yeah. I enjoyed the hell out of that. But your idea was, how about if you take off on your... I come up with a whole bunch of pictures. Gene kept saying, nah, that's not right. And then finally we talked, right? I think that's a sequence of it. You talked, we talked, and Gene told me, I think you talked with Gene, and you said, well, how about if you derive it, would I be all right with kind of like playing with the original Star Wars poster, do a takeoff, figure it forward, and
right.
But that was your idea. And
every once in a while I have one.
It was a cute idea. And, so I replicated more or less the color setup.
Yeah.
And the composition itself.
Well,
that was fun. Well, I mean, I love painting Red Sonja, and I mean, everybody that's done it, my God, back, it's like, holy crap. She was back, Howard, right? And Roy Thomas, and the artist, boy. See, I'm slipping. The first Sonja artist.
Oh, Frank. Well, no, Barry Windsor Smith introduced her, but Frank Thorne is the person that really embodied her.
Right, but I'm saying Barry Windsor Smith, basically, you're right, then Frank Thorne.
Right. Barry put her initially in the silver body armor.
Right.
I think it was Conan 23.
God, I haven't seen Frank. I met Frank Thorne 40 years ago, I think. But before he looked like a wizard.
It's funny when you look back. I mean, the impression he left on Red Sonja was literally, I mean, he was having Red Sonja cosplay in the 70s. Wendy Pini won one of the contests. It's hysterical. You know, I mean, it's just life. No, Barry did a beautiful job of creating this incredible character with Roy Thomas. Even though he didn't give her the chainmail at first, what he did do was give her the attitude. Yeah. You could see the attitude in her face, like right. Like you're gonna be able to take me on. Not when I kill you, we'll talk in your next life, right? So I'm really glad.
I think that whole genre of powerful women like that it's a great theme. It's fantastic. I mean, I personally never had a problem with that. I have a very powerful mother. I mean, a great. Now, I don't mean domineering or anything like that, but just a strong lady that doesn't take shit from anybody.
And that's the thing. I mean, it's when you look at these women, the whole idea was that they could stand on their own. Look, even Vampirella, which we own, Trina Robbins created the costume. You'll get some people criticizing, like, oh, this is not a great way to present a woman. It's like, it's a strong woman. Yeah, exactly. Wonder Woman is a strong woman.
You're in charge.
Exactly. All it is how can you be a defender of liberty if you're not exuding your strength, you know? I mean, what are you gonna do? Put Wonder Woman and, you know, well, I'm sure by saying this, somebody's gonna do a drawing saying, see, you can have Wonder Woman fully clothed.
Right, or they'll criticize you for what you're saying, what the hell ever.
There's nothing you can say in the world today that you won't get criticized for.
No, I know.
Not a single thing.
You know, it's like they criticized, you know, the girls paying pinup in the 50s, Betty Page and all. It's like, you know, Jane Mansfield and all of them, you know. It's like, again, I remember, I was born in 39, so I remember the 50s, and there's great stuff about the 50s, and there's horrendous crap about the 50s, let's be honest about it. Depending on, for white males, it was a wonderful world.
50s and 60s were great for white males, not for anybody else.
But not for anybody else. And women's place was in the kitchen and the bedroom.
Yeah.
You know, a working woman was demeaned. They were, you know, you wearing the pants. I mean, I can remember it vividly. There was just that kind of talk. It was just that attitude. And, you know, you're supposed to look like you know, with the frilly apron, putting the pie in the oven and all that kind of stuff, you know?
Well, Nick Cardy used to tell the story of Ramona Fradone because she was one of the first true female art. I mean, there have been plenty. I'm not saying there haven't been. But
Zoe Moses was a great pinup artist. Zoe was fantastic. Anyway,
yeah. But you know, Nick Cardy's the one who told me the story. So Nick said Ramona would go into DC offices and wouldn't take shit from anyone. He said people would give her shit and she would put them in their place. She's there to drop off art and to pick up a check.
That's Gene. That's what Gene, you know. I can still remember the first encounters at Marvel. Some of the guys just backed off. They didn't know how the hell to handle it. They were still 14-year-old boys, you know, living, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm saying she was a powerful lady. They just didn't know how to handle it.
Right.
And she's straight as can be. You know her. She's no bullshit. She's straight. She's honest. She's right to the point. Business, you know?
Yeah.
And this is fantastic to me. That whole world, I was always uncomfortable with that world in the 50s about women. You know, again, I guess mainly because my mom was a lady that was not like that. You know?
Well, because again, women are as equal as men. Listen, this world, there's, you know, we've become so much more divisive. And I know we got to wrap this up because you got to get back to everything you got. But this world has become so much more divisive. You know, people, you know, talk about good and evil in the comic books. You know, the world is full of gray. The real world is full of gray.
Yeah.
Nothing is black and white, you know, and I think that people try and make everything black and white, and it just it causes every day more divisiveness.
Oh, totally.
And everybody's equal, just like you were saying before. Everyone's equal. We all put our pants on the same way. We all brush our teeth the same way. We all go, you know, we do different things in life, and it doesn't matter what you do as long as you enjoy it and as long as you treat everybody with the same respect you want them to treat you.
Yeah, this world today is like, you know, the packaging issue, right? You need to be packaged. Oh, he's a liberal. Oh, he's a conservative.
Right.
You know, it's like I reject all labels like that. I'll take human being and artist. Those are the only two I'll accept. Because once they think in their mind, oh, he's a liberal. Oh, so they've got their picture, whoever they happen to be, of what that means for them. As though, whatever the line is from Shakespeare, there are more in this universe, in heaven and on earth than are dreamed of in your philosophy, buddy.
Right.
You know, it's like those are the only two, and that's going on so strong right now, right? I mean, my God, more than I can remember in my lifetime. And it's so simple-minded. It's really stupid. There's all kinds of billions of possibilities, you know?
Yeah. And you just said it best. I mean, the world is should be so much simpler than it is. And but I want to finish, you know, after pushing, prodding, begging, pleading, and we're lucky we had a character like Kulan Gath as a villain, but
he was cool.
Seeing the final, it was a huge honor to see that. And you know, it's funny, you know, like you said, you don't do this for the money, but no,
that's not my motivation.
No, I understand. No, I mean,
I'll take the money for sure. We need money. We all know that. I mean, I'm not a fool. That's a
No,
fact, Jack.
but you're not sitting there saying, I'm only going to do a job that's going to pay me 50 grand. I'm not going to
No,
do anything
no, no,
else.
no, no, no.
You want to do the work. And
I
yeah,
love working.
you want
I
to
do
make it.
sketches for people. I do comic cover. I I have fun drawing. I love to do
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
And what I will tell you, it was rewarding on two levels. Not only how beautiful it was, and not only that the Kickstarter is doing successful, and hopefully fans who are watching this, if you're so inclined, feel free to check out the Kickstarter. If you want to pledge, please do. If you want to just share it, please do. And if you just want to see how great Greg's art is, just check it out. But the one thing I'll say is when I spoke with Jean, and she told me that you sold the original right away and that you did well with it. And that's between you and the buyer, how well you did.
Yeah.
I was so pleased. I mean, to me, this hit the right thing. It was exactly, it's not just me that loves it. The world sees it. And then Jean was looking for some of the pencil designs, and she pulled the one of the designs. We put it up for $1,000. It was gone in 30 minutes.
Yeah,
it was literally, we sent one email blast saying, by the way, we just put up one of Greg's pencils, $1,000. Boom.
Good. Well, I'm glad for you.
Wow, glad for you as well.
Jean's telling me she's got another sketch for you.
Yeah. You've got a few more. We'll add them in as soon as she gets a chance.
It's like, I draw a lot of pictures before I come down to it. Sometimes you hit it the first time around, and then you just play. Mainly, it's like fun. I don't even like to come upon it the first sketch when I'm doing something like a layout for that. I like to just draw. So I'm having fun drawing, It's like just enjoying the whole process.
Well, let me end the interview with this. I will tell you this. What I was saying to you earlier is not only with the Tolkien art that you created, the Lord of the Rings. I meant what I said, where the world owes you, sci-fi owes you, fantasy owes you, all the studios owe you, Peter Jackson. But the one thing I'll say on the personal level, and since 1993, since I've known Jean and since I met you at that party, and I met Jean as well, but we didn't know each other at that point. That might have even been late 92. I think that was late 92 when I briefly met you. When I met her with Joe and Jimmy, she's right, it was 93. I will say that my life has been better knowing you both. And I appreciate that.
Wow. Thanks. Thank you.
No, you two are two of the nicest people I know. You are incredibly talented. Jean is incredibly talented. You're right. She takes no shit. It's one of the things I love about Jean. They're short conversations. You don't
need all that. You get down to it.
The only way conversations become long is if she doesn't like something and she explains to you why, and you're working through it, or she likes something and she's talking to you how to make it better. The short conversations are, no, we're not doing it. Let's talk about something else, or this is perfect. Let's run with it. But I mean, it's all makes life easier. One of my other rights holders, Elvira, the gentleman that I work with there, Scott Marcus, is just like Jean. And he said to me once, he's like, you must hate talking to me because I say no a lot. I said, no, I don't hate talking to you because of that. I love talking to you because of that. Because at the very least, you say no, we move on, you know? And that's what I love about Jean. If she says no, or if you say no, we move on. But just knowing you guys, period, has been a personal, but also a professional high for me. And I feel blessed.
Same here, Nicky. Knowing you.
Thank you.
We love you, and we love working with you.
Thank you. And I'm glad, and we got more beautiful things to come. And audience,
I'm looking forward to it.
Please go to spiderwebart.com. Check out everything. There's something for everyone. And just, even if you just go there and enjoy the beautiful art. I mean, I just said I'll leave it with that, but I'll also leave it with this. Greg's artwork is beyond sci-fi. It's beyond everything. I mean, you should see his pinups. They're gorgeous. There is nothing that Greg doesn't touch that doesn't affect the fans or the world. So there's a great variety, and there's more that Gene has on the website.
Thanks, man.
Until next time.
Until the next time. Look forward to it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Gene. Take care.